Welcome to one of the most listened to music news podcasts in the world, SGNP, with your host, Darren Sutherland. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, artists, and entertainers about their faith, family, and careers. This is information you will not find anywhere else on radio, web, or in a magazine, but only firsthand on SGNP.
So it's a problem that will fix itself, but right now it just looks really ugly. I mean, when you think about somebody playing your music 55 million times and you get $1,700, it is absurd.
We've seen MyPillow on TV. We've heard them on radio. We've talked about them. Guess what? This is Darren Sutherland. I've just got a MyPillow, and it works. And their products are 100% made in America by Americans in the great state of Minnesota. You know what? Everyone deserves a great night's sleep, and MyPillow can help you no matter the circumstance. Call them today or visit them online at MyPillow.com. And when you visit them online at MyPillow.com, always use the offer code SGNP so they'll know you heard about us on Southern Gospel News Podcast. Or if you would rather call and talk to an individual in person like I would, their friendly staff is ready to help you. 1-800-338-2330. 1-800-338-2330. And make sure you tell them the offer code SGNP for a great deal. And for an extra special deal when you call, ask about the Premium Pillow Special. Everyone deserves a great night's sleep. I have a MyPillow. You should too. And welcome to SGNP. Darren Sutherland and my co-host, Arthur Rice from up in Sevierville, Tennessee. Dollywood, probably walking around the grounds between shows. Arthur, how you doing, my friend?
Good. Doing great.
Well, we're going to have fun today, Arthur. We got a special guest. We're going to Nashville, and we're going to interview somebody pretty important that a lot of gospel music fans may not know by name, but I promise you they know some of the groups and artists he produced. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Ed Leonard, President and CEO of Daywind Records, is our special guest today in our Industry Profile Show. Ed, are you on the line, my friend?
I am on the line and ready to go.
Ready to go. How's it going up there in Nashville these days?
Well, it's good. It's a really great creative atmosphere, with Music City kind of buzzing with all of the increased tourism and things going on downtown, all the building and everything. It's just it's a great time to be in Nashville, honestly, and for all forms of music, but especially for gospel music.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Ed, tell us a little bit about your background and your family background. You've got enough kids to start your own TV show, is what I've been told.
Yeah, I have 9 kids, which is I don't even know how we got there, but I certainly would not trade the world for any one of them. So it's been a different kind of life, but very neat nonetheless. And I've been working at Daywind now for 25 years. So I came out of the banking industry after college and worked for a couple of banks in Chicago. And my mom had started this company called New Day Christian Distributors in 1981 after working for Calvary Records. You remember Calvary Records?
Yeah.
They had the Hensons and the Telestials and a variety of other great groups, the Freemans. And so she really got to loving Southern Gospel working for them and selling that music to Christian bookstores.
Right.
And then she went to work for Windchime, which had the Payne family and Heaven Bound, with their big song Canaan Land is Just in Sight, and several other artists as well, and did the same thing for them. She called retail stores and also radio.
Yeah.
And then when they decided they wanted to kind of back away from the retail store side, it was really what she loved. So she started New Day Christian Distributors, selling to Christian stores, and developed a real nice specialty in Southern gospel music, helping artists get their product into Christian retail stores. And that has built up over the years, and she's now in her 37th year, I believe, of operation. But early on, she realized that she needed her own product, and so she started Daywind Records with the first artist being the Cumberland Boys.
I remember those guys. You
remember
those guys, Arthur?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Arthur ought to be very familiar with that, because they did at Opryland theme park what Arthur and his guys do at Dollywood.
Yeah.
Performing several days a several times a day for the entire season. And I don't know, Arthur, you can tell me whether this happens or not to you and your label, but I would get a call from Depp Britt of the Cumberland Boys about October 15th of every year, just really upset with me about the things that we weren't doing for them. And I would look back, and it was every year on the same day pretty much that I would get this letter. And finally he confessed to me. He said, Ed, after singing 5 times a day at the theater all summer long, you just get so worn out and so that you just need to vent at somebody. So I guess I was his venting target. But we had a great relationship with the Cumberland Boys. Does that sound familiar to you, Arthur?
Yeah. That's true. And part of that, I think too, is same with us. Is we're kind of removed from the norm of the gospel music arena, for lack of a word to say. But and so we don't see a lot of the things that the record companies do. So we're the same way. It's kind of like, what are we doing, or what's going on? And so I get that. I understand.
So
all Chris has to do is send you back your reports of your number one songs, and that makes you happy, right?
It's like oh yeah, okay, now yeah.
So anyway, I would get those calls. But so she started Daywind Records. Cumberland Boys were the first artist, and then we started working with a group called the New Hinsons and the Steels, and had some really good success picking up artists that were operating independently at the time, and bringing label services around them. And we've been so blessed to work with just some of the greatest artists out there over the last 25 years, and our publishing company too has been amazing, the growth that it's achieved.
Ed, what made you see that the banking business, I don't want to say wasn't for you, because you were successful in it in Chicago, but that you needed to come home and help your mother with Daywind and New Day? And what made you make that transformation?
There were two things. Honestly, one was, the first and foremost, it was kind of a call on my life, because, I loved business and I loved music. I grew up just loving music, and the opportunity to come home and do those two things in an environment where the end goal is to spread the message of Jesus Christ. How could your life be spent doing anything more worthwhile? And you can go and make a lot of money somewhere, but at the end of the day, you can't. There's not enough money to fill the emptiness inside of you. But when you're working for Jesus every single day, and I think it's sometimes hard, because you get in, and Arthur, you could probably speak right to this. It's very hard sometimes to see the impact that the things that you're doing are making on people. And you get it somewhat on the front lines, Arthur, but you don't see even the people that are listening to your songs on the radio, whose lives are literally changed from something that they hear, or who's that's the greatest case, but on an everyday case, who's just encouraged every day, in their walk by the songs that they're hearing. And to be a part of making those songs, getting that word out, helping build ministries is really affirming and fulfilling. Yeah. And the other thing she did for early on was she started Daywind Soundtracks.
Right.
So, if you think I don't know how many million soundtracks we've sold of those things, but if you take the songs that are popular on radio and you give people in their small churches and big churches a way to sing those songs and spread that message even further, imagine the impact. So, the Daywind Soundtracks have been arguably as influential, if not more influential, as the record label.
Yeah, because
I would say
product.
Absolutely.
I would agree with Arthur, absolutely, because they've crossed not only gospel lines but genre lines, from great songs like I Can Only Imagine to a lot of other things. That y'all have been able to do. Ed, give me, you've mentioned this is not only this is a calling on your life. Give me a wow wow moment when you've been there at Daywind New Day and looking at the business and you just sat back for the first time, or maybe a time that you can recall, and you just said, wow, I mean, I can't believe that's just happened, or that's transpired, or something that you know could only be ordained in heaven that had happened, that you can recall right off the top of your head?
I mean, I don't want to mention necessarily names, but just seeing transformation in the lives of artists, where maybe things aren't going very well for the artist, and then, 5 years later, they're just a changed person because God has made that change in their lives. And, when you see, I'll just give you a couple of things, but when you see the power of a song for the very first time, like the very first time I heard My Name is Lazarus being sung live with Greater Vision, I mean, just the electricity that just came through that room was unreal. I mean, just literally supernatural. I mean, of a higher plane that only Jesus can occupy. Just that kind of electricity. But there's all of those songs over the years. For me, I kind of look at it through songs, and I wish I could have been there. And
yeah.
Another Perry song that Joseph Habedank sings, If You Knew Him, and Rodney Griffin songs throughout the years, and the countless Karen Peck's kind of growth over the past 10 years with us, Grammy nominated several times and Gospel Music Hall of Fame inductee, and seeing God really pour his favor on people who have knelt at his feet to serve him for years. That's just especially gratifying to me.
Ed, let's talk a little on the business side of making, and we're going to use the words records, but we don't make records anymore, but just for loose genre.
Well, we still do. We just released a vinyl on Jason Crabb, so I guess we still make records.
Yes, that's exactly right. Thanks for correcting me. But, streaming's the big thing now, okay? And
yes.
in Best Buy announced, 3 weeks ago, we're no longer selling CDs. Peter Frampton, the rock artist, and things roll downhill as we know, made a statement on Twitter the other day that said 55 million streams of Baby, I Love Your Way, and we all know that song, and he made $1,700 off of those 55 million streams, which he feels is totally inappropriate. And he went to Washington and he talked with ASCAP, and their draws dropped and this, that, and another. How has the business changed overall for the record companies, for the artists, with streaming and all this new genre of music? I mean, I know how it's changed on the radio side because of things like what we're doing here today, podcast. But how has it changed on your side?
It's been a dramatic shift. I mean, the good news is, people still buy CDs.
Mm-hmm.
The good news is, radio still sells records. The good news is people still want to see artists perform in concert and experience that live. All of those things are still working. But streaming is an answer, and digital was before it, to the Internet's absolute devastating effect on music, because now people could steal music at will and listen to it for free, whether they got it through BitTorrent or whether they got it through Napster or however they were doing it. That's what started this whole mess. Music has changed formats over the years, but really the devaluation of music, or the commoditization of music, started with Napster, I believe. And you broke a CD down into singles back again. That's kind of how it was in the 50s and early 60s. People would buy singles, not albums. Then they bought albums in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now it's back to a singles market. So an artist goes and does 10 songs on a CD, and really people just want the 3 radio singles they heard. But streaming, I think, will help that, because now you don't just get fed the radio single that the record company and the artist wants to put out. You get to go choose what you want to listen to off of that album, because it's all readily available. The struggle is there's not enough money in the system to feed back to the artists and the songwriters yet. But as these, as the subscriber rates increase, and they're still increasing every single month for Spotify and for Google Play and for Amazon and all of these services that you have out there. As they get more money, more money is going to be shared with artist labels and songwriters. So it's a problem that will fix itself, but right now it just looks really ugly. I mean, when you think about somebody playing your music 55 million times and you get $1,700, it is absurd. And then, what's funny? If he were to then go and look at his YouTube money.
Oh, that's what my next question was. Yeah.
Yeah. If he were to look at YouTube plays, they pay about 1/7 of what Spotify does.
Yeah.
And that difference is called the value gap. The fact that you can listen to it on YouTube and the artist or the songwriter only gets paid 1/7 of what they get paid on Spotify is absurd.
1.5 billion music downloads on YouTube is the estimate right now going out of all types of music.
I would be surprised if that number is not
higher.
$1 trillion. Yeah. I mean, I think that number on YouTube is probably higher.
Wow.
So it's crazy, and at the same time, music has never been as important as it is right now. It's the soundtrack to people's lives. It's what you turn on when you want a little lift. I was had my headphones in this weekend while I was mowing the yard, and a old B.J. Thomas song comes on. Off one of his Christian albums that just gives you a lift, gives you a spark, and that came off of Spotify, and I might not have gone and looked for it on a CD to play it, but the fact that it just was in my feed and came on was an encouraging thing. So it is the way that music is going to be consumed, and we've got to figure out as an industry how to fight for more. I'm kind of on the front lines of that.
Yeah.
I sit on a group of music association executives that through my role with the Gospel Music Association.
Ed, hold that thought right there. Arthur, we got to take a break. We'll be right back in just a second on SGNP.
This is Maurice Templeton. You're listening to SGNP.
Gospel music's largest annual event, the National Quartet Convention, is returning to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. See the Hoppers, Greater Vision, the Mark Trammell Quartet, Jim Brady Trio, Triumphant, Kingdom Airs, Ernie Hassan Signature Sound, the Isaacs, Jason Crabb, the Gaither Vocal Band, and many more of your favorites all in one amazing week, all in one amazing place, the LeConte Convention Center in Pigeon Forge. Plus showcases including the Singing News Fan Awards, Gaither Homecoming Celebration, and Gerald Wolf's Hymn Sing. And speakers Dr. Robert Jeffress and Dr. David Jeremiah. The National Quartet Convention. See the entire schedule, get travel info including vacation packages and hotel information, and get your seats now at nqconline.com. That's nqconline.com. Or call 1-800-846-8499. That's 1-800-846-8499 for the National Quartet Convention 2018 at the LeConte Center in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, September 23rd through 29th. nqconline.com.
So what's wrong with living right anyway? Hey, I'm Karen Tech Gooch from the River, and you're listening to SGNP.
Welcome back to SGNP. Just before the commercial break, Ed was talking about he sat on a few boards, industry boards in regard to the record companies. Ed, could you finish that out for us?
Sure. Sitting on those boards gave me an opportunity to really see the problems that has been created by streaming, and by really not so much streaming, because streaming is a solution. The problem are with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, where there is a safe harbor for internet service providers, which basically protects them from being sued for infringement for what their users do. So if somebody uploads something on YouTube, for instance, a video of, let's say, the Kingdom Airs singing at Dollywood this week, Arthur can go into YouTube and get that taken down. Now it might pop right back up, but he cannot sue YouTube, he can sue YouTube. He can't sue whoever, like Comcast or whatever. Actually, he can't sue YouTube either for this, because they're protected under the Copyright Act. But it's a strange thing in the law that protects people who are providing illegal activity, are basically encouraging illegal activity. I mean, if you're YouTube, what do you want to sell more than anything, or what do you want to see happen more than anything? Content, right?
Right.
So you encourage people to go to, not literally encourage them to go to Kingdom Airs concert and record a video, but you're certainly happy when they do. and any new content that can be put up, they're going to make money off of through selling ads or whatever. And it's a matter of us getting our fair share of those things from those services. And it's improving, but it's not nearly what it is or what it should be. And we could talk about kind of the
we could get down in the weeds with it, but
we could get down in the weeds even further, but let's not do that.
Let's not do that. I'm going to switch subjects because this has been going on since you and I were teenagers. And Sears first introduced the dual cassette decks, and we were making our own mixtapes. I can remember standing in front of the TV and thinking it was neat to record the Dukes of Hazzard, Just a Good Old Boys, and the different theme songs. Speak real quick, because a lot of your artists, and a lot of artists in particular, in the Southern gospel world in particular, are making comments lately on pirating and the problem with it within the industry. A lot of folks think, we're doing good because we're making copies of our CDs that we buy from Greater Vision and we're giving it to grandmother. Tell folks where we're wrong in doing that.
Well, it's just against the law. I mean, that's number one. And as Christians, we need to follow what the law of the land is. But even more so, you're taking away from somebody receiving a fair day's wage or fair day's pay for a fair day's work, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who writes a song, the person, the recording engineer, the musicians, they don't get paid when somebody steals a piece of music and gives it to somebody else. Now, burning a CD for your grandma, I'm never going to say that you shouldn't be able to do that.
Maybe that was a bad analogy. Maybe that was a bad analogy.
There's a big stretch between that and sharing it across the world on the internet, or just making it uploading an album that can be downloaded by whomever, whenever, instead of being purchased by that person, in a legal form. And there's so many legal ways to do it now that aren't expensive. The streaming services have great catalogs of music. You can still listen to the radio, and when you and of course digital downloads are available for everything at a very inexpensive price, and then you own it. I think people don't realize that when you subscribe to Spotify, that's what you're doing. You're subscribing. The moment you stop subscribing to your cable, you lose all of that access. Mm-hmm. The moment you stop subscribing to Spotify, you lose all of that access. So true music lovers should really still buy the physical good so that they have that form that they have purchased and that they can collect and own no matter what happens. That being said, subscription model is an and, not an or to me. I mean, I think people should buy the CDs of the artists they love so that they have it, but they should also subscribe to a streaming service, A, because it's cheap, B, because it gives them all the music they could possibly want to consume when and where they want to consume it. But you still need to own it, because you never know, when you're not going to be able to afford to continue to subscribe to these services. And you remember what cable fees used to be 30 years ago? Yeah. About $20. What do you pay now? About $150.
Unless you've cut the cord like 30% of America. So,
unless you cut the cord, right. But there's got to be a service. People aren't cutting the cord because they're not watching television anymore. Mm-hmm. They're cutting the cord because it's easy to access Netflix. It's easy to access things on YouTube. The cost of those things will continue to go up, and so it'll be cheap for a while, but it will get more expensive over time.
Ed, last question for you. Gospel music, for lack of a better word, has a bright future, and the reason I can say it has a bright future is because our show in particular has taught me that. We would have been happy with, and I think you and I have had this conversation, Arthur and I have had this conversation, we'd been happy with 6,000 or 7,000 downloads of this show inside of the first 3 to 4 months, where we've had over 100,000. What do you see as the future of Southern gospel music? And looking forward, where do you see it going? What do you see happening? If you were just a fortune teller here.
I'm going to give you my theory on Southern gospel music. I'm going to throw it to Arthur a little bit here. So Arthur, 30 years ago, what was the color of hair of the people in the NQC audience?
Gray.
Last year, what was the color of the hair of the people in the NQC audience?
Gray or blue.
Now, okay, so those people 30 years ago are in heaven now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But they weren't in the people whose hair is gray right now, they were not in the audience 30 years ago, a lot of them. Southern gospel music is something that people, I believe, grow into as they get older.
You know what?
And
Maurice told us the same exact thing. Maurice said every day somebody 80 hits the dirt and passes away, and and somebody turns 50 and they decide they love gospel music. So it's funny that you said that. It is funny you said
that. And it's because Southern gospel music, and I use this term, Southern gospel music is gospel-laced instead of gospel-based. Mm-hmm. A lot of other forms of gospel music are gospel-based. In other words, they're singing about love and they're singing about Jesus, but it's not necessarily in the words of the Bible. So as people get a little bit closer to heaven, as heaven is more of a reality to them, or more of an immediate reality to them, I believe they want to hear about that and hear about what it's going to be like and hear about or be affirmed in their belief through the message that is contained in the Bible that is then, creatively interpreted by our songs. And so I think Southern Gospel's there's no death in Southern Gospel. There's only life in Southern Gospel. And what further encourages me is the younger artists that are coming up. I mean, when you see groups like the Irwins, or you see guys like Joseph Habedank, who, if you get a chance to see those two in concert together, by the way, they're touring together right now. Yeah. It is absolutely a wonderful experience, and you should go out and do it. You will be energized. But these younger groups are learning from the core groups, like the Kingdom Heirs and Greater Vision and Legacy 5, and these guys aren't old. These guys are in the prime of their life, singing this music. But they've influenced, Karen Peck and New River, they've influenced this next generation of artists who you're starting to now see pop up and in very good form. I mean, they're writing great, they're singing great, they're excited about their faith and about sharing that with other people, and I feel like the avenues that we have to reach people through our music, whether it's the streaming services or radio or podcast now, certainly satellite radio. I mean, Sirius XM with their Enlightened station is, if you have not subscribed to it, you need to subscribe to it, because along with your local radio, it is just an amazing way to consume Southern gospel music, and they have been very supportive of our genre when they didn't have to be.
You're exactly right.
So,
Ed, we're up against the clock. We could sit here and talk all day long, but I want to make one promise to you. You have been so nice to me since we've started this podcast. When the laws are changed, because people ask me this every single week, and I get tons of emails, why don't you play songs? Why don't you play songs? When the laws are changed where podcasters can play songs, or the rights fees are in such a way, a Daywind artist will be the first person we play. Is that a deal?
Oh, I love it.
All right, man.
I love it, except for right after Arthur's song. I mean, hey, let's do this. Let's compromise.
There we go.
Let's have the Kingdom Heirs singing a Daywind song. Let that be the first thing that gets played.
And now Greg Bentley's going to call my office this afternoon and say I was recruiting folks.
Ask Chris White.
That's right. Chris will be there too. Chris just friended me on Facebook, and now you've ruined that for me, Ed. So anyway.
No, he'd be a good interview too. You need to reach out to him and
we'll do it.
Get everybody's perspective. It's awesome.
It is.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, my friend, for talking to us. We'll be in touch later, and thank you for being on SGNP. All righty?
Wonderful. Enjoyed it.
Hey, this is Darren Sutherland. You're listening to SGNP's Podcast Edition. In the Podcast Edition, you'll get an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes of talk that you won't hear on our Southern Gospel News Podcast radio show. So make sure you listen and subscribe to Southern Gospel News Podcast wherever you get your podcast from. I love being on the radio. I love that our show, Southern Gospel News Podcast, is now on the radio in select markets. Contact your local radio station if you'd like for us to be there. But the bottom line, with a podcast, you can listen wherever and whenever you want and get more content. Whether it's from Apple, Stitcher, iHeart, Alexa, Google Home, you can listen to it even online. SouthernGospelNewsPodcast.com. So always make sure, if you want the most in-depth information, listen to Southern Gospel News Podcast where you get your podcast from. We're glad to be in radio, but hey, that keeps our time constraints some. Want to hear the little extra? Listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Great interview from Ed Leonard, President and CEO of Daywind Records, and man, Arthur, he threw it out there. He said, "What about doing a Kingdom Heirs project on Daywind? We'll just let that dog lie. How about that?"
Yeah, we might better.
at least you know you have options in this world. It's always good to have options. But anyway, hey, real quick, and we've got to get out of here. And we appreciate WLJA airing our show and our podcast. Real quick, Arthur, you sit out there and you sing every day, 3 shows a day, 5 days a week, unless that one man's there and he says you're never there. But anyway, you constantly are looking in the crowd and you're seeing people videoing your concerts. And they're videoing the whole things. They're not just doing one song. Sometimes they are doing one song. If you went back and probably looked at that, you've got well over 1 million views. Because when we did the interview with you guys, we had 14,700 views that we've saw just from the time we interviewed the Kingdom Heirs.
Yeah.
Should the artists be compensated for that in some way? Because they're taking your project, the writers, the musicians, and all that, and putting it out on the internet. I mean,
we used to kind of watch that, and we used to kind of try to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
But we realized that there was no way to stop it. If somebody's going to video, they're going to video, and it's a catch-22 situation for you. Yes, we don't get compensated for that, but it also is exposure that we can't get anywhere else, and it really is a catch. And it is coming around, and it'll get here at some point. And like Ed, said in the interview, it looks kind of dark right now, but it's coming around, and it'll get here. We just got to get through the fog before we get the final end.
There you go. There you go.
And so, interesting side note to this: my first job in industry was working for Beulah Music, and Dottie did our distributions. He started doing our distribution for Squire, and of course, then it was just Squire, But that's pretty cool that it's been that long. Kind of started at the same time. It's kind of cool.
He didn't say this, but this is the truth. They haven't made they've made good money off of Daywind. Where they've made their money on is them soundtracks.
I'm telling you. Well, that goes right back, because Squire was really he was the guy that started all that stuff. There were tracks. I mean, there wasn't nobody doing tracks, really, until Squire came along.
Right.
And then when Squire came along and Dottie picked it up, I think she realized the impact that was going to make, and that's when they kind of started doing, their tracks, and that grew from that. I think you're exactly right. That will go down. One of the biggest things for our industry, and especially for local church people.
Think about this. I mean, we've got Jonathan's sitting here, I'm sitting here, you're sitting there, Charlie's where he's at today, and this is a bonus section for our podcast listeners. You're not hearing this if you're listening on the radio. You're only hearing this if you're listening to our podcast, and you need to go to Southern Gospel News Podcast and subscribe so you can be one of the first people to listen to this every single week. And you can also hear us on Alexa and Google Home and say, play Southern Gospel News Podcast, but you're not going to get this extra information that you're getting from Darren and Arthur right now because we're not on the radio. And that's the great thing about podcasts, Arthur. And it's like you said, it's the great thing about the digital business. It's growing, and it's only going to amplify our industry. It's not going to hold it back. We're not held in time constraints. We can be creative. We don't have to be controlled, so to speak. It's kind of like I would say for Southern Gospel music fans that are above 50, and a lot of them are intimidated with new technology. You remember the time when Hamill would come out and say, okay, we're going to sing 45 minutes, boys, and at the end of that 45 minutes, when we sang Meet Me at the Table, I'm going to close it with Meet Me at the Table of the King, and after 45 minutes, if that crowd's still going, Hamill may just decide to sing it over again 2 or 3 times, or he may cut it off depending on what he felt like the crowd was. That's almost what we can do with podcasts now compared to radio. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
No doubt. Well, man, got a lot of good stuff coming up, and a lot of good plans coming up. We're coming up there to see you again at NQC. We'll be there and see you win your Susan Luke's.
It'll be here.
Yep,
it'll be here before you know it.
Be here before you know it. Clark Beasley's getting us up there, and we appreciate Clark bringing Jonathan, me, and Tim, and Charlie up there. Charlie's out today, but he'll be back with us next week and later whenever we do another one of these, Arthur. How about that? But every Friday you can get the new one on Southern Gospel News Podcast. Arthur, as always, thank you, my friend. I'll let you go so you can go sing and eat lunch or whatever you got to do.
Always a joy.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. You've been listening to SG&P, a product of BG Ad Group and the Southern Gospel News Podcast. Have a great day. Hey, real quick before we get out of here, we're going to give away a Daywind Record prize pack, Daywind Records prize pack. And here's how we're going to do it, Arthur. Right now, we've got about 8,200 Facebook friends on Southern Gospel News Podcast. I'm going to put a number out there. The 8,300th person to join Southern Gospel News Podcast gets the Daywind prize pack. Also, go to our website, sgnp.com, Southern Gospel News Podcast.com. Arthur, we got to get out of here, my friend. Thank you today for being a part of this.
SGNP is excited you chose to listen today. If you'd kindly leave a remark and rating in the podcast remarks section, we surely would appreciate it. Please share with a friend or family member. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and our new website, southerngospelnewspodcast.com. And remember the Kia Summer Nights concert series, all 100% free, coming to a town near you. For more information on the concert series or to advertise your products, services, concert event, or new project on SGNP and reach a 100% guaranteed number of people in your area, call Tim Newton at 770-874-3200 or email him today, tnewton@bgadgroup.com. Let us geo-target our ads for you, something radio nor magazine can do.